That's Ms. Lee from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we've heard today, my Republican colleagues would like to use this hearing to bolster this narrative that the Biden administration is enacting a war on energy. And we recognize that that is is falsely promoting this idea that combating the climate crisis is somehow mutually exclusive with promoting economic security. But we know that this is a decades-old myth that's been used to excuse the unmitigated polluting of frontline communities, especially communities like mine in Braddock in the Mon Valley of Western Pennsylvania. For generations, communities like this, largely black or brown or poor and working class communities, have been kind of made into these sacrificial lambs, right? Left to sacrifice their health, to sacrifice the air quality or the water quality in their communities, mostly for the sake of good jobs, but also for the economic prosperity that the nation has enjoyed. Passage of the Inflation Reduction Act serves as to prove that this argument is not just a false choice, but that we can and we will, and we have the tools to fight the climate crisis while creating high quality and union jobs. In Pennsylvania, the IRA is expected to create more than 200,000 jobs over the next decade, and it'll incentivize investments in low-income and disinvested communities that have been harmed the most and that stand to lose the most. But to make these goals and the intent of the IRA a reality, implementation matters, of course. President Biden's Justice 40 initiative, for instance, aims to ensure that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments, including investments in clean energy, workforce development, and the remediation of legacy pollution, go to disadvantaged communities. However, prioritizing grants funding through Justice 40 isn't enough on its own to combat decades of underinvestment and disinvestment in frontline energy communities. I'm happy because I feel like in years past, some of these questions about how do our policies impact marginalized and frontline communities probably would have gone unasked. And I'm proud that we've had several folks sitting here today ask these very questions. I do want to leave a second. If there is anything specific or anything more specific, like for instance, a community like mine, that is a community that for a long time has not had the opportunity to turn a corner, because we haven't had the opportunity to think about the future economies, particularly as we think about steel. How can communities like mine, in the shadows of the steel industry, as it's struggling to figure out how or where it goes next, how does the IRA and the DOE impact our communities?
Yeah, I mean, let me just say, the great thing about the president having signed that first executive order on Justice 40 was that means that everybody's thinking about how do we make sure that we do right by communities that have stood at the back of the line. And so what Congress did in providing, for example, a 10% incentive, additional stackable tax credit for locating in a disadvantaged community, that has achieved, if policy works, that has actually achieved and steered and drawn investment to disadvantaged communities. We're doing our part with our community benefits agreement. We've just stood up an entity called READY, which is working with communities to know how to negotiate a community benefit agreement on their behalf. What do I ask for, et cetera? Giving them technical assistance in making sure they've got a level playing field in negotiating. But all of the work that Congress has done has given us the ability to help communities that have been at the back of the line.
Thank you. And similarly, as someone from Pittsburgh, I represent both a marginalized frontline community and also a community where labor is incredibly important. Part of building a new energy economy is the development of a workforce that is high quality and unionized. A 2023 DOE Office of Energy Jobs report found that workers in the energy sector were more than 1.5 times more likely to be represented by a union or covered under a project labor or collective bargaining agreement. In Western Pennsylvania, we know the value of good union jobs. So it's crucial that federal investments coming to our region and every other region benefit from a strengthen our robust unionized workforce. And as we grow our unionized workforce, to be very clear, we also have the dual responsibility of ensuring we're creating pathways for those traditionally underrepresented in the trade unions, and particularly women and people of color, to participate. So, Secretary Granholm, how is the DOE working to ensure that the growing energy workforce includes high-quality union jobs? And even more specifically, the intent is to focus on labor agreements specifically, right? So how is the department prioritizing project labor agreements and competitive grants allocations to ensure we're supporting unionized workforce?
We encourage project labor agreements, and projects that come to us are evaluated on the strength of their community benefit plans, which also require paying of prevailing wage and having strong labor practices. So we are doing our part to embed a movement that will allow for more unionization, but we can't require unionization. We can just say we expect people to be treated well and paid well, and hopefully the private sector takes it from there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate your time. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Groveman from Wisconsin.
Yeah.